Shidalik and good afternoon everyone. I am Kunga Chirin and I, on behalf of Tibet Museum, would like to welcome you all to our bi-monthly Tibet Awareness Talk Series program. The Tibet Museum has been holding this program for more than a decade, which provides a platform to our in-house researchers, and we also invite Tibetan and non-Tibetan scholars and researchers to present on Tibet issues or to speak on heritage-related topics. Before we proceed with the session, we have a short clip of Kasur Professor Samdong Rinpoche, where he shared his thoughts regarding the Nangpa La shooting, and a testimonial video of Doma Palki, who was the best friend of 17 years old nun Kelsang Namso, who was shot dead during the escape.
This was one of the first chance, the incident which was noticed by the world thanks to the people who have shoot the photographs and the undisputable evidence which has been given to the world, then people come to know. Otherwise, it is not the single case, not the first case. Hundreds of people are being died on the border or get back and put into in prison, and so many things are happening for the last 20 years. But this is for the first time. And it is a good lesson to the PRC authorities as well. They cannot kill the people so easily without any notice by the world community.
시간 잠보 텐데 뭐가 다 시라 다 가면 보텐데 시라라 말이 다 점을 저기야 가게 배고제 텐데 처음부터 텐데 말이야 로 주사야 내라 이미 다 정말 텐데 자니 배자매 아니 마치서 다 뭐라 가시나 시라 이사를 샤도자 배가에 가서 다 같은 다 신다 텐데 차 아니 다 좀 가리니 배가 좀 문단하지 그래서 많이 말에 다시 우리 친구 같은 거서 제가 메시지 보내야 되니 다시 신어야 돼 많이 돼.
Today we have with us Mr. Mark Gold, filmmaker and theatre director with a lifetime of storytelling experience. He has made more than 40 documentaries for Australian broadcaster, the BBC, and many European outlets. His films have won many awards around the world. Mark has also made films that are themed around Tibetan community and culture. His documentary movie titled Tibet Murder in the Snow featured the Nangpa La shooting incident that happened on 30th September 2006 and is a part of our permanent exhibition in the sixth session called Escape. Today, Mark will speak on the topic In the Time of Rising Chinese Power, Remembering the Brutality of Nangpa La is an important cautionary tale. At the same time, we are immensely honored to have the presence of Katsula, Tsutim Lodila, and Jansamdela, three of the survivors from the Nangpa La shooting. We are grateful to have this opportunity of listening to their first-hand experiences. The Tibet Museum's very objective is to tell our stories with our own voice, and this talk series is a great example. Without taking much time, I would like to hand it over to the speakers.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. It's a great honour to be here, actually. I feel quite emotional because it's not often that a film you make has a big impact, and this one has had a significant impact. It's a great pleasure to have Jamyang, Gyatso, and Saltram here. Jamyang is kind of one of the stars of the film, and Saltram less so, because actually you can't have everybody. So you have to choose. But the story goes like this for me. In about mid-October 2006, I turned on the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Commission, and those of you who are Australians will be familiar with Joe O'Brien, who's one of the regular presenters. And I saw this clip of a murder, what in Hollywood terms is called a snuff movie. It was an actual murder on screen. And I just went, I don't believe it. Well, I did believe it. And I sat there and I kind of went, there has to be a story behind this story. And my job as a documentary maker is to find the story behind the story. Because you don't necessarily believe everything you see on television, but I believe this was incontrovertible evidence. So the process from that point was to begin to do research. I teamed up with a producer from Melbourne called Sally Ingleton, who's a very good researcher, and together we made this film. Films are never made by individuals, they're made by groups of people who work together. Anyway, the process of making this film was about building trust between myself as the filmmaker, or us as a team, but particularly me because I was the front guy, and the victims of the victims and survivors of the shooting, and on the other side of the story that hasn't been represented in this contextual video, the mountain climbers who witnessed the shooting. So the story is roughly like this. On September the 30th of 2006, 70-odd pilgrims were leaving Tibet to come to India for various reasons, and the lads will talk about their reasons. But fundamentally, education, getting out of Tibet, China, Chinese-occupied Tibet, and to meet the Dalai Lama are primary objectives. Education in Chinese-occupied Tibet in Tibetan language is highly compromised. Jamyang will tell you later about experiences he had in a nomad school, of being beaten and taught in Chinese and blah, blah, blah. But right now, since these lads have left, it's even more draconian. In the last few days, I've interviewed a Tibetan educational sociologist of some seniority. He was a professor at Yunnan University, and Dr. Giallo said that there are now no schools in Tibet that teach Tibetan language. So the cultural genocide starts at the age of 4, when children are extracted from their families, sent to a boarding kindergarten preschool. From 4 to 8, they are immersed in Chinese culture. They're taught the Chinese curriculum. They're taught no Tibetan history. And so what is happening at the moment in China is that there is an attempt to completely eliminate Tibetan culture and to turn all Tibetans into Chinese people by absorbing Chinese history, Chinese culture, Chinese language. And children who go to these nomad schools, these boarding preschools, are alienated from their own families. They may live in a family with a multi-generational family where Tibetan is spoken. They come home at the weekend and there is virtually, they are silent. They more or less forget their Tibetan language. They more or less, their culture is obliterated. You know, that's what's happening now. When these lads left, it wasn't quite as draconian as that. So after seeing this news clip, the process went like this. We're very blessed in Australia to have a thing called the Australian Film Commission, or now called Screen Australia, and it was possible to get some research money. So I came over with, on a small research development grant, $12,000, and went to what was then called the transit school. So when Tibetan pilgrims came over to this place, often after walking over an 18,000-foot pass in snow, walking past dead bodies, frozen bodies, into Nepal, they come through Nepal, through a transit centre in Nepal, then a transit school here, where the first adjustments are made, the first new lessons about what it's like to be in a new country. And from that point, surviving pilgrims are sent. Firstly, they will all have an audience with the Dalai Lama. That's very important. And At the audience, Jamyang, I'm sure, will tell you, the Dalai Lama said, "Tell your story with confidence." And that gave these guys the confidence to speak to a Guilo like me, an Inji man, a foreigner like me, who's there with a camera trying to capture their story. So the first research trip I did, I met most of these guys. I don't remember this guy, but I probably met him. But these two I got to know very well. And they all sat with their English teacher, a translator, and I deliberately did a two-shot so that we could build relationship. And Jamyang told his story, Sultram told his story to me, and the English teacher translated. I went back to Australia, cut a show reel, and my colleague and I then managed to score a deal with the BBC, with about a dozen European broadcasters, and with SBS in Australia. So the funding model, and we actually got together quite a good budget. The funding model was global. And the primary funding actually came from the BBC. So they were, in a sense, our main client. The next step was to win the trust of the mountain climbers. So on the morning of September 2006, 72 people are walking up a pass, 18,000-foot pass. And on one side of the glacier, the glacial moraine, which is the pile of rocks next to a glacier, there are 450 mountain climbers in a long camp, different expeditions from different parts of the world. One of the mountain climbers was a guy called Sergiu Matai from Romania. Now, Sergiu was a news cameraman who also had a penchant for mountain climbing. And he was there with his camera, and he was trying to make a little film about his own attempt to get up a mountain called Mount Choi Oyu, or the Emerald Goddess, it's translated as, which is the training run for Everest. Now, this is right on the Nepali-Tibeto border. So the border runs through these mountains. And the path that was a traditional trade route and was used by people to cross over into Nepal is 18,000 feet. And at the top of the ridge, you're in Nepal. And you can imagine, here you're in occupied Tibet. Here, one step later, you're in Nepal. And these guys were less than a kilometre from freedom. I was under some pressure when making this film to call the mountain guides who helped these guys get over, to call them people smugglers. Well, I refused. They're mountain guides. One person's smuggler is another person's hero. So you have to look at that and remember when we listen to right-wing populists talk about people smugglers, they're also saviours for some. So that's a very important point. So just to go back to the story, the climbers were going, the pilgrims were going over in two groups. The first group was 42 people, and the second group, which was separated by maybe an hour or half an hour, were 30-odd people. Jamyang was in the second group. Sultram was in the first group. Is that right? When you're militarily trained and you're asked to fire a weapon at a convoy, you take out the first guy and the last guy. And then the convoy is trapped. This is military training in any culture. So when the Chinese soldiers were asked to open fire, there were half a dozen of them with street fighting weapons, basically Kalashnikovs, which are rapid-fire weapons, but you can put them into a single-shot mode, and they're not terribly accurate, particularly over a few hundred metres. They're meant for 50-metre street fighting. 3 people were hit. The first guy was hit, and he was hit in the ankle, and he actually got over. Another guy was hit, I think, in the leg, and he was subsequently captured, is that right?
Yes.
And the last person in the convoy, in the line of people going up the pass, remember, this is 18,000 feet. That is 50% of the oxygen at sea level. So you can't run, and the snow is this deep. So you're walking in a channel. It's almost impossible to run. even Tibetans who have incredible lungs and incredible hemoglobin systems for processing low oxygen, still find it difficult to run at 18,000 feet. Bang, they shoot the tail end Charlie, the last person, and her name was Annie Kelsang Namtso. And for those of you who are from outside this culture, Annie simply means nun or sister, and Kelsang Namtso was a young trainee nun. She was a small person, and she was shot from armpit to armpit. The bullet went straight through her chest and out the other side. She went down. When the gunfire started, some of the mountain climbers thought, oh, it's Diwali or it's crackers. It's fun. Some of them went outside. Someone's having a celebration. Those who are militarily trained, like Sergiu and the English police officer who's in the film, said, that's gunfire. Sergiu, who's a very quick thinker and understood oppression, this is a very important point, because he came from Romania, he grabbed his cigarette lighter and he burnt a hole in his tent. And he got it in the netting part of the tent. And he fired up his camera and he rolled. And he, with an absolutely steady gaze, he rolled on several shots. He got cutaways of the shooter, and then he filmed Annie Kelsang. He filmed the first guy going down, and he filmed the last guy, Annie Kelsang Namtso, going down. Now, once you've got footage like this, and you're in an occupied country, and there's military just down the road, you've got to be really careful with what you do. And when Annie Kelsang Namtso fell, she, obviously bleeding from both sides of her chest, she crawled about 20 metres. Everyone else ran. And Saltram will probably tell you that the monk behind him pushed and said, keep going, keep going, keep going. She's finished. She's gone. We can't do anything about her. Dolma, who you just saw, she's my friend. She now lives in Belgium and has 2 kids. Great girl. She was Annie Kelsang Namtso's best friend, and she wanted to drag her, but she was pushed by a young monk. And most of them got over. The body of Kelsang Namtso was left in the snow for 2 days. Sergiu said, once she went down, I couldn't film anymore. He buttoned off. Anyway, via courage and, courage and ingenuity, Sergiu managed to get the tape out of Tibet. He hid it in plain sight, actually. He took the little cassette and he damaged it with used it like an ashtray, actually. Burnt it, made it look shitty, and thought that if the border police pick him up, they'll think it's nothing. And he hid it in a little pouch on his belt, and an extraordinary man. He got to Kathmandu, and he was followed around Kathmandu for days by Chinese secret police. They knew that someone had taken stills, and they knew that someone had video, we think. There were a couple of other people who shot bits of video, but they didn't get the murder. They got stills, there was a little award ceremony when the boy who'd shot the young nun was rewarded. We got footage of that. Anyway, the process from being here and meeting everybody, my colleague and I also had to win the trust of the mountain climbers, who were, in a sense, a much more difficult group to get the trust from, because they wanted to come back. They were, mountain climbers are kind of adrenaline junkies. They want to come back and do it again. And if they're pinged by the Chinese police or the Chinese security services, they may not be able to come back. And to climb mountains from the Tibet side is cheaper than climbing mountains from the Nepali side. So it's a desired route. And it's a big multi-million-dollar industry. Now, there's a guy who was the chief kind of mountain entrepreneur who put about the camp that these young people here were whores, drug dealers, and scum. This was the propaganda that was put about. I won't name him, but he's still in the business. Some of you may have seen a film called Sherpa, made by a colleague of mine, fabulous film. He comes out rather badly in that film too. So we won't mention him, but he's a Kiwi. And the first person to make millions of dollars out of mountain climbing. So he had a very intimate relationship with the Chinese Tibet Mountaineering Association. So the politics were very delicate. There was an American man called Luis Benitez, who's quite a famous mountain guide, who also witnessed this murder, and he was totally traumatised by it. And what Luis did was say to his group, "We're getting out of town," and they just went up Choi Oyu, and were absolutely shocked that nothing had been done, that no one on the camp got on the sat phone, no one in the camp reported anything internationally, because even the Western mountain climbers were totally intimidated, thank you very much, by the process and by the context in which they're in. Anyway, look, it took about 2 years, the whole filmmaking process. What we did was, I came back here after having built relationships here and with the Department of International Relations. A wonderful guy called Tupton Sample helped us, and another guy called Jigme Sering, who was the then head of Tibet TV, which was a very nascent organisation at the time. Were just so helpful and supportive and loving and caring. I'm sure some of you have experienced that Tibetan spirit here. We went to Jamyang School and to Saltram School, and what I did after interviewing maybe 20 people, decided that there were 3 people who could feature in this film. And they were chosen for 3 different reasons. One was a guy called Lobsang Chöndön, who was a son of a farmer. His father only had one leg. He'd been beaten by the Chinese and lost a leg. And Lobsang Chöndön was an older guy. He was like in his 20 or maybe 25. Gutsy as all, or get out, a butter trader. Jamyang, because he's outgoing and he had a great story and he and I got on really well, but also he was in the second group. He wasn't in the first group. So he was in the second group, were captured and jailed and tortured. Gyatso was in that group too. And the other person who's featured in the film is a woman called Dolma Palki, whose image you saw earlier. And Dolma just, to me, was completely radiant, as honest as the day is long, and the best friend of the woman who died. So I think we chose well. And so then we had this process. Basically, to tell this story, we filmed in here, we filmed in Nepal, we filmed in America, Romania, Slovenia, England, and New Zealand. So it was a big job, because by this stage everyone's back at home, and so I had to go and find these people. And again, we slowly built their trust. And in documentary, trust and love are the most important values. If you can generate love and get to know each other and be completely honest, you can get trust. And that's a kind of two-way street, as you know. And what's important for a documentary maker is to be a bit like a doctor and have a very good bedside manner and try and stay small so that the people who are being asked to speak can be big. That is my ethic as a documentary maker. I might be being big now, but believe me, when I'm behind the camera, I can be very small. It's an energetic transfer, and it's about trust. And in a sense, there are only two questions in documentary. One is, who are you? And the other is, what happened next? And each of those questions leads to another question and another question, and you give people the freedom to tell their story. And that's kind of what we did. And essentially, even with both sides of the story, the narrative of Tibet Murder in the Snow is the story of a group of mountain climbers who want an adventure in the mountains, and a group of pilgrims who want to come here for their various reasons, mostly education and to meet the Dalai Lama, spiritual reasons. Most of the pilgrims were young, but there were some older ones. Jamyang has a fantastic story of meeting his guide in Lhasa. So Jamyang made the decision to leave at what, 14 or 13?
14 years.
14 years. Now, for 4 years before that, Jamyang worked as a yak herder.
Yes.
And collecting yatsagumbu. And I don't know if some of you won't know what yatsagumbu is, but it's in Chinese medicine or in Western medicine, it's known as Cordyceps sinensis. It's a herb and an insect. So a fungus grows on a grub, and in some contexts it's called summer insect, winter grass, or the other way around. Winter insect, summer grass. Anyway, it's a blood tonic in traditional medicine. Very valuable, and so Jamyang did that in the season, and in the other season he herded yaks, and he saved something like 15,000 yuan. Okay, that's like a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid saving 15,000 bucks, which is I'm full of admiration. He gave $5,000 to his mum for his sister's education, $5,000 to the not so trustworthy mountain guide. And there's a scene in the film where Jamyang exchanges money. We did some recreations, by the way. And the mountain guide, Jamyang says, I looked him in the eye and I didn't really trust him. Because what the mountain guides sell is, oh, there's 12 people that'll take you 3 days. Give me $5,000 and we'll do it. There'll be a truck. And then they get to the truck in the back streets of Lhasa and there are 72 people. And they drive for how many days? 3 days?
Yes, almost 3 days, yes.
So they drive for 3 days at night, and they're cramped in the back of a truck, and then the frighteners are put on the driver because there's warnings coming in about what the surveillance is, and the truck stops in the middle of nowhere, and it's right, at you get, you're walking from here on. And that's like a month walking at night through rocky, hilly, high-altitude country with maybe a thin blanket and half a kilo of sampa, not much more. And buying water from opportunistic villagers who are selling water in plastic bags because they're sneaking past military encampments. It's one of the most incredible stories I've ever encountered. So that's probably enough for me. The mountain climbers is another side of the story, but look, there was spies everywhere. Sergiu got his tape out into Romania. He handed his tape to his boss, who was a kind of television entrepreneur, who then published the tape, and of course it went to Reuters, it went all around the world, and 2 years later he won an international Emmy. And a few Johnny-come-latelys come along from Australia and make a film. I had made one other film in the Himalayas, and this was, so I sort of knew the way in, but I didn't really know the way in. I had to, but luckily, we are blessed in Australia by having institutions that can help filmmakers, and at the time, we got quite a lot of support. So I just say thank you very much to the Australian government, and thank you very much to the Tibetan government in exile. Samdong Rinpoche, the first person you saw, was the then Karlon Tripper, the then Prime Minister, an amazing man, and he just said, go for it, go for it. The Dalai Lama said to these kids, go for it, tell their story. And the film screened to, the first night in England it screened to 5 million. The second night it screened to 8 million, the second time it ran, the word got around. And then it went into 8 European stations, and then Ireland. It went through many film festivals in America, mostly mountain festivals. It never got a major broadcast. I think PBS picked it up in America for one screening. Getting stuff on air about Tibet is incredibly difficult. It's just, from a filmmaking perspective, it's not good business. Tibet is not good business. If the story is strong, yes, but people say, oh, you make films about Tibet. Well, you're not making any money, are you? Well, no. But nonetheless, if the story is important, it's important. I guess I'll finish by saying this. There was a Luis Benitez, the mountain climber, who I have enormous respect for, said to me in an interview, some stories are so important that they just need to be told and retold and retold and retold and retold. Otherwise, they will disappear. So, in a sense, your being here is another retelling of that story. I really want to thank you.
Chashidele, everyone. I am Jayang Samten from Nangpa La Cases, and I'm from Tibet, Kampa, Dege. And now, actually, I'm not so good to speak in English. Maybe my pronunciation gonna be a little bit hard to understand, and I'm a little bit nervous now. But no matter how much I'm nervous, I'm going to tell this true story to you guys. So in here, actually, this Nangpa La cases, it's really hard to explain in few words because it's a long way. If I really got a time, I'm gonna be so emotional and telling this all story because it's a true. So in that Nangpa La cases, now it's been many years back, but through these Nangpa La cases, I know that before when I stay in Tibet that time, that how much Chinese government have fooled me. And I even don't know why they are doing like this. But when I was staying in Tibet that time, I always thought that, oh, the government, Tibetan government is there. But Chinese government will not hurt us like this. And even what they teach us is, this will be good, that will be good. At this one, you will not worry. Even the kid who are not reaching the 16 years, they is not allowed to put in a jail or prison, something like that. So I always trust like this. Actually, they are fooling us. They are just using us, and they're telling us, they're giving us their knowledge to our mind. So I remember maybe when I was just in 6 years, I joined in my first school in Chinese government. It was in Nomad. So that time, young time, I was living with my family. Even Chinese government want to fool us. It can't be done because my parents are pure Tibetan people. They used to teach us from the young time the Tibetan history, and Tibetan is like this. You should be yourself. You should be. It's not necessary to listen to someone like this, and you just study yourself. But that time, what is the most sad moment I have been is when I was in Chinese school that time. One day I got a gift from one of our Guruji, and it's our spiritual leader. His one is Dalai Lama's necklace. What do we call? It's a necklace. The middle we have our Guruji photos over there. So one day I was a little bit careless. My parents have told me to not to wear this and go outside and if special school. So that time, how do I know? Because from the young time, my parents believe in a God. They used to pray a lot in every day. So of course, since do as we also follow like our parents. So I thought that it's important to wear in every single day. So I went there. But it's not even school director. He's just our school teacher, but he's a Chinese guy. And he is giving me warning. He took me in outside. He beat me badly, seriously. And the last warning he gave me is, if you wear this necklace again in coming school, I'm going to kick you out from the school. So through that, I was not understand why the Chinese government are doing like this to us, even in the Tibet place. They are allowed to teach a Tibetan language to us, but not pure. Just a hi, hello, or speak some easy Tibetan language. That's it. But they are focused. They are much focused on the Chinese language. And after we reach in 3 years, after we reach in class of three, so they are forces us to wear one of the red. How do I used to call this? Is a just a Chinese. If you are study well, if you can get a good result from the exam, then you might get something from Chinese government. Once you have that, then you are belong to. It's sort of you are under the Chinese like this. So that's why every of student at that time they are young, so they might not understand what is going on, but they only very expected to get that one. Everyone is studying hard on the Chinese language to get the red things only. So now, once I reached in India, I remember this all thing. I was a turn up, and I know how much the Chinese government was fooling us in there and teaching us in the wrong way. I'm sorry. So that I left my school because I know there is no future. If I keep going to staying there, they're gonna be not teach us in the right way, and I'm gonna be not getting good opportunity. So even I know about little bit the Tibetan refugees in India when I was in Tibet. So I give suggestion to my mom. So my mom told me, it is not possible, it is not easy to go there. Everyone is not easy to go there. You must need to have a good brave or something. You must need to have a good guide like that. But as much I ask my friend, I try to get so much story about India side, Tibetan government side. So there's a school, there's our Guruji Dalai Lama school in there. They're gonna give you good knowledge. You go there and study over there, so you can come back. So I finally make decision to come in India for study. So the problem comes on the money, because I don't have single monies, and I even don't know how to reach there. Even I don't know. When I first reached in Nepal that time, I thought that I reached India already, and I was this much excited and happy. But finally, no matter what, I reach here, and then Nabala cases, I think it's just a part of Tibetan story, really. More than this cases was a catch by by video, so that's why we can show to all the world. But how many things didn't catch by video? And they're gonna be so much, because when I was in prison in Tibet, Dingri, that time I saw not even us, so many Tibetan are in jail. They had lots of different. Some are come back from India, they catch by Chinese government, and they're putting in there. And some are going to India, and they have been catched. And there is a little bit different between people who come from India to Tibet. They are more risk. They even not allow them to put us together, because they know they already have something in their mind. I'm talking about the people who come from India to Tibet and have been catched by Chinese police. So that time also I have been punished badly, and this is the guy, and most emotion thing happened today is, it's been almost 16 years ago, and after I catch by Chinese government, we are in the jail in the same time. So after we come out from the jail, so we all are separate. So I went back to my home, and he went back to his home. So I think I stayed 2 weeks in Lhasa, and I try again to come in India. So the next time I was a success to reach in India. So this guy today, I met him by many years back. So I got a little bit emotional about that. Then if some people might think, maybe will think that if in China, we are staying in Tibet of China, if there is if you are not doing any political things, so you're gonna not have any problem. Actually, it's not like that. Even you stay there, even you study, whatever you do also, you will really not feel any freedom over there. I can say that because I saw by my own eyes. So this is the way I choose to come in India. Now it's been long years back, and still if I remember this again, I really got so much emotion. But anyway, I'm gonna say thank you so much for the people who are supporting us, and special thanks to Mark Gold. I call him as a dad. There is a reason. It's not because of he is doing something just little to Allah like this to Tibetan people. He is doing to all of the Tibetan people. He is supporting us till now. So I'm really gonna say from my inner heart, thank you so much, Dad. Really. So it's like this. So I will to answer some question maybe if you guys have. So if I talk about the story, it will be a long way. So I suggest you to watch the film. There is a documentary called Murder in the Snow. It's very clear and with that one. And thank you so much.
So I'll try to translate and do a little bit of justice to whatever you say. I'm not any translator, but because of the crowd, I would like to translate it in English. So yeah. Ngi me la ganso la bu ne nga phayu chungpo tinchi la sa tenere. Chungpo tinchi. 당근서 용해된 니도 저로 용제 다티고라 차지도 뭐지시 나 야이다 중보선도 차라 대인데 뒤든다 지나 텐스라 다 용해된 니도 저로 용제 아니 것도 되네 야오 지지다 라하니 마음 그또 들지지 디갑 소아데다 다디갑 소안도 지다가 시그라 아니 파연 동보 용게 무연도 제다 아니 대 발란 동제 좀 됐지 섭지만다 소음도치라 뜻이고트스 My name is Gatso, and I'm from Kyungbo, Dingje. And so I will talk briefly about the 2006 event in Nangpa La. So, of course, touching the different emotional things that went with me, and also briefly touching about why I escaped from Tibet. 동부 파연의 초연과 그 무연도도 가르쳐서 땅에서 불대하이나 아니 제 소속가 건반 대지 달라발람네 지 보이보기 쪼다 보이보기 지들지 대사지 요말에 대인데 철로는 무여 쪼도 대 소속다 지 주들요 쪼쪼다 점고는 못 주빌라지나 반자야다 아니 소속 주들을 용라야지 대중의 지들 무여 쪼 대인데 철로 연구해야 돼. Okay, so the prime objective why I escaped from Tibet is inside Tibet there is no freedom to learn your own language and to follow your own culture. So number one reason is to learn Tibetan language and to learn about your own culture and practice your own tradition. And the other important objective is to meet Dalai Lama and to seek blessing from the other higher Lama as well. Tiende tati zo yong gwe de mo yo ti che ani ti on de ta lam kan che le on de zamba la ting so ta de gon de judong ko number shi cha so ra da mo mi to ti ti kap ta so ko choan ro chi na choa de ta ti kap che ta ani ta ting so lam kan ti ro de re ka pa ka so ka so ma re che kon re che ti che memda so pi ti zamba la chi ta da na yil to ka la ku sta chi ka di che zo ko ta chi 가드수나 상가라 멘다도 비쇼크체 못에 가파 멘단 피용도 좀 다가 자고라 때저게 쇼크체 몰고라 지 쳐조다 심하시에나 저왔 야이 쳐조다 디가도 저왔 괜찮지 요리 So to talk about the escape route, so as he along with other 70 plus member who escaped from the Nangpa La route. So the emotion was, just you were going through the Nangpa La Pass, and all of a sudden there is a shooting from, yes, and the emotion is, it's very, it cannot be expressed in word. It feels like, means it's just about to end his life. So it's very difficult emotion to explain. Menda zum Peter Jing Zamba la ta la ya chawa de chi zo ga du si yong na sa sa ro ma to yo ma ri ta kong da palon ta so ti ti ga mendan pyong ti dra ri do ra chom ra to ja je on Zamba la ya chi zo ku to je ta te ne ni ma zu ni ngo so ta khu su phong ma ngun ro ani sa chi ngo so ti je ni ta dong bu cho chi ra cho chi ti ti ni khu su ma le on Zamba la ma mu to so ku pu to so ta ani chin ma le on ra mo sun din ya sun te ta dong to ja mo so donde ya tengo so zong tene la kwa de ja ja mo so po chi po chung chung so da ja ma so ani po chung ja chung da so khor ju ka je la ani ma so le de ja ja te ma thi so ra de ko so ka la ko de ne te jam police to la ton la to ga la so ke shi ta ja mo je si oris an tu du gyo rin ro je la go no ma to 주로서 다 들으진 좀비 디요이나 주로서 디세가 말이스 다티 들지 시자에도 주로서까지 동보 랑관은 조선 뭐 보지 당 디칼 아니 뭐지 들지 다토갈 시오리스 텐데 아니 두ጆ린도 라고다 고도 뭐 인데로 산 야고마다 제메 konda 다가지 지쳐져 버다 말라 간다 말라 철론도 질레나 당가서 다다다 내라 롱롱관데 되지 말은 통요 바지 다 지네다 지쳐져 말 마인 통요 바지 지네 하고 라마도 세트니 부나라 말라지 마인 통다 지지 요라다 치져 티자니 요마리다 konda 무세라 논데 지메다 무실 초크로 요마다 마다가 사야라 되지 말 랑칸은 로데 갑도다 맨다로 제세고.
So if I talk about the situation, when I ran here and there, all of a sudden we bumped into the Chinese army, and we were all caught. And those who are elder were handcuffed, and those who are kids they drag along with them. And also they were saying one of the nun is dead, so it is her fate because she chose to escape. So it's just like not giving the human value, and also during that time he realized that the value of human being is very minuscule. It's not even so that is also a reason why coming to India and I think escaping Tibet, it is to get your own human value.
아니 드네 마치 등르시다 사타나라 가서 마존 다 마치 등르지 주소라 정권 대가도 등르지 주 대가도 사다 정권나나 돈이 돈보다 가서 대도 돈보편이 랑관을 하서 아니야 좋은데 가서 다 가서 초초요라 당서 지방인 되는 뭐니 맞라 뭐 초마초 랩청기다 그거마 니저 다 가서 찍노니 무슨 로바 찍란도 니니 맞다 가서 되는 교도나 가서 무슨 말 드는 거지 요라 얘는 때문에 다 무슨 대가 세모조조 용도는 하는 로사가 말랑가 좀 중국은 되게 된 것도 다 대가도 슬라산 루루지 저 팅 잠발라 정게 들루지 뭐지바는 메데다 들지 던데지 있을 깔에 가지고는 지리서라 중국은 왔다가 남님만 만들었잖아 아니 다직 다잔도 지 지마 돈도도 파 트렌드 잡종 고자다고 잡종도가 알리들 아니 데체 수트 잡종은 도지마 땅라 한 고자마 땅선 그다데 어떻게 혼나야 들지 깔에 가지고도 등르신 가스 중국은 근데 그래서 드와 땅그라 드와 땅데 가도 저 간도를 내가 들지 철로 장고는 붙인 제 간도에 일래 그래서 무슨 동도 들지래도 가르친도 했다 그래서 뭐 드와 땅도 들지 뭐 붙이 땅 깔에 딱 오스트리스는 가시운도 들이서 근데 드네 마서 제가 제라 다니 라스죠 대가도 다 제당도 뭐 붙이라 ni lega toye ta ngaso tikane lamkan chungye da drochi da ta lamkan kale ka su chi gon da ta yai mo bochi ta sa chi mare chi gon shine mo bochi.
So I will wrap it up here with the experience in the prison. So of course once we all are caught, we were segregated into a very smaller group, and the biggest part is the biggest I should say the difficulties is you don't know anyone, right? So you were just separated into a prisoner of two, and only during the when you go to the toilet your handcuff will be open, and then you have to come back, and all day you have to stay inside the prison, and and then they interrogate why you want to escape, and he answer about meeting His Holiness Dalai Lama, and then 시가지를 가래. 시가지를 수치래.
지가지 틀리라.
And
지가
then
정권은
순간하래.
정권.
Okay, and then he is shifted to Shigaze.
다니 last that. 다니 last that.
For 2 months, he is shifted to the prison in Shigaze, and and then I think he will explain more with the Q&A session. So he want to complete it here.
스니다 뭐 붙이 하지 다 다디 나랑 그 초안도 질레운데 다 철올len 가서 대치 디캅도서 다디 넘발라 계세 챘다 로스 뭐 번도서 다 철로롱 넘발len 로모 볼레운데 다 다다 나랑 초나도 선도 아니나 또또지 좀벨렌지 토라 다 야말레데 또 자카 쳔보임 바타 자카 초마가 진다 지고 근데나 자만당지 말롱 레데 아니 메조 터지 인도 잠발라 다도 자카도 소든들지 쳐서 그래 초마가 텔지 좀벨레 자카 모보지 칼라 그래 이나 지 통 자카 쳔보임 바타 지 mud Jipalindo, Jacob the Jacob Jipambando, Nando Jamal Tato Kano line, Mullen Tonsa and Majonkis, that it's all line that I think of that little. Then that all about the Loja Titson on it. Tadon Jama Cronson in that Jacob Jipa is and one end in the Mulla Cronson and it Mullen Tom and Joke that Juma, Messajuma, Mullen Cronton Joke, Tajila. Jacob Soma and Druchi, Tadon Chisavan Deva and Rochi, Druchi Passola. Chipa and the Tochi Jacob is the kind of the Mochi dead. The color Kandan rich in the Kusuchigo Nasra, don't know that's all.
And so 2006 has, and the experience of 2006 is, I should say, it's many years of experience, and to me, the paradox is, still across the globe, China is considered as a superpower, and all the countries are dealing with the Chinese as a superpower nation, as a means upcoming the one country, I should say one of the prosperous country that all the countries are keeping the Chinese. But to me, if I frankly tell you all, China is the country where there is no any human value. So it is very difficult, and to my surprise, to know that when I reach outside Tibet, across the globe, everyone is treating China as the the country to work with, the country to the trade with. So so it is still one big question inside my mind.
Lasso ani thamala tashtele yu tam ji yongwe jujin dang me yu dan jamyan dang khoni ni ja ji che song de thama pa ji ngan zo thama ji gwa ro cha ro gre chu da re xiong da ran jiang gu ro bu jin ji ya chi de lu jo ro gre thama an de yang ja xin gu ma gwa ji.
And tashtele to everyone. So as the objective is briefly told by the Jamyang and the Kaso, so it's similar to me as well. The prime reason is to meet His Holiness Dalai Lama and to preserve and promote our culture and language.
an de ri da na yin ge nga zo ro yin na bun ro yin na ji jiang gu ro ji la ya de sha jiang gu ro ji par chi xia wa yin na gong ni bin ni kin ta chao gan de zo ba ku jiao de na bin ni xia ya ma do ge ngue se do bu xia ya yo ma de zo de ta ta sang ma de ha go ge ji ra.
And to give you the example of how brutality the Chinese oppression has been, so keeping a portrait of His Holiness Dalai Lama is also very difficult for us. We have to hide it, every here and there, and once you are caught with the portrait of His Holiness Dalai Lama, you will end up in prison.
Tini ta Nangpa La kan ni dang kari kangi chi yomi maa che to temu ta video tang par tang sama ma buji tuen ri te sama kuzu ka go gur. Ta Nangpa La ma le pa te la nga su ni ma chubdin chubji si yang kompa jan Nangpa La ti paru la ta nga su ki shejo tang ru ma dong ne ki pi cha ta ta kar video ta te su che kong yo ma re nga su ki Nangpa La ma ge pa te la jami ma gar ma bu chi ma ga chi ni ma re ma ga pa chi ma bu chi nga su ki ta close chi ni yong ri. Dia karje Nangpa La ma le pa nga su ke nyima kanza re kan la ni me tang chog ma re sli ra chung jo re ke yo re ani tin kanza la ta langwa ka ji la ku jo de na reng go de la troch pa ni ro chog re langwa ka ji la troch bi ki chog ma re na go chik chik tham ni do yer ta inda ji ni ta nyima ma bu chi le nga so.
Okay, so all of us know what exactly happened at Nangpa La Pass, right, on the 30th September 2006, but nobody knows before that. So it's 18 days, you have to cross from Tibet to Nangpa La to reach 18 days. So he's recalling about 18 days, that is preceding the Nangpa La, the incident. So before that, we have already crossed so many Chinese barricades, and that itself is, very dangerous. And also he told about the how we cannot use the fire and the gas, and at certain place we cannot use the torch as well. We have to just hand hold each other's, and then because we are just sneaking through the Chinese barricade.
Tindar ro tini ta ngazo nangpa la lipro chi du last maga te tatis maga chimbu do chi resha ti ji du maga ke kala kartu la na nangpa te maga te juni ma do rosa yesa mare maga te kala lo chimbu chi du lo te du pa so roni ti resha ngazo mo sama ser chi le sha ani mo ni som lo pa jawa ta ani won gu ji pa ju yang lo so jawa de this day dus chi ni sama tin so ton re ta langpa
Yes, and
Gondar.
of course the Nangpa La, the barricade and the Nangpa La Pass, where Chinese are there. So this is the only road which we have to, trespass. And what I recall is, there is this lighthouse, and lighthouse keep,
A
searching
watchtower.
a watchtower,
Yeah.
watchtower, which keep on searching the people. So once it is moving to the right side, then we sneak through. So that's what he recalled.
Tene nambala tuski nambala ya ge nambala ya manzangula ni ngaso mo dunchu khala ti kar nambala ni ngoni jina nambala ti konda chi chutu ta jeba goba ga dung ko chwa ni shoki na malung ni nambala ti ge chawa chi go ku sar namri je te ngaso ke ya jod li du te la ringu khujo je li du nambala langa no langa mara mo loga cha mo group ni cha ta lamri group lamri ni yore lamri chi group jimba te so ta gal man ro ti chi kuzu ra yo no menes lamri chi chi ani nga chol da sera gomba ku yo shur koran ro ina pula moma pula ni chole seral de yanja pula phandu nga so nyam choli bjur ko da langwa nangbala ni ma ching ro nyang du ko ti sa gor da dini nga so dini tu sian ro gor la ti zambal pa chi di nga so na ma lang group chi wol sa char ta sunin se char 제디 잠발랑 아주 단다 인지게 단다 레간 자니 되서 구도 거여 살리도 쇼키 주주 돈바 제바 인지를 상도 다 델리도 아니 마밀레샤라니 텔라 인지 되서 가서로 비스코트 하고 당부 되서 믹스기지 임바로 먹고 체스라
Okay, so the unfortunate thing is, to trespass the Nangpa La the pass, you have to pass it in the evening and during the night. So we have started our journey at around 8 p.m. That is on the 29th of September, and the problem is we lost the route, and because of that, the plan of crossing the Nangpa La overnight, it just could not happen, and there were two tourist guides who were helping us, and both of them lost the route, and we also were a bit fortunate. We were accompanied by one of the Sera monk who went to India and then came back to Sera, and he was accompanying with this group of 75. And unfortunately, we could not cross it in the plan what we had planned, and we reached the Nangpa La at around 7 a.m. The next day, and we met few of the the hiker over there. So they gave the biscuits to the kids.
닌데리 드라지 좀발 다 람지 지데 고조 통야면도 다 남세사리 지키는 고조 셈사인지리 지키는 고조 랑발란테 디지리 고 마자가 되인 야마 고런 스케저를 티스 총 디버로 저디 좀라 호프칼 마밀레송라니 야마 게제 총스 다 참마 ngazu de nenso jabde tsamol mamile sonan keje hyunzu tsamol ma tsama chambrita sososo panro chonro kada chagombo yigi ringo de tongori lani ngazu ke amcho non tangun yor ta ko lamti tangu yo de tsama lapsar tide tanga tagara ti lat tinin rogul la de tagara mix kan roita tini papa jing ngazu tu si de la sansam le gidi tsamol ngazu nget tu stana mo chuji juni chi tambo lesh sansam getops 다들 멘다 자연 고조소 멘다 끼마부페 고긴도 아니 이제 지도 말다 소소다 뭐마부 리그리 가서 뭐직 순질 직 마도는 소소소 로고나 랑관은 되니 야 걔는 로고나 랑관은 뭐직진 로통 말 카운티 하우스 마소루 뭐직 공부 지질 직진 랭로 된 로키 두지들 가서 랑과 랭고 파트너사 산사바 게자바이 되다 소소 때 로바 임바데서 깨지 해진 다 아니 지글라 포송스 다디 시유나 가레시나 수지기 다 라야다 티야로부터 데드다티 소소소다 같이 트토토마도비 ngabi ta ti pe ngune koro ta shin sari ma ngune ta ri tili ta jab tili ngarang ngamra ki koro ni ha tambu churu ma to ani inda ro ri ina ngasala nangpala tus gir.
So one of the other tour guard who were waiting for the searching for the other group. So what he recall is we have to cross this Shergombo, Shergombo. We have to cross this peak Shergombo at any cost, right? And they were close to around 11 people who have already crossed the Shergombo, and they are just at the other side, so they are on the safer side. And so when Shergombo, he heard that one of Nan is shot dead, and that's what he heard. So we cannot do it. So he was just at the other side of the Shergombo.
That is tini dangazo nangpalan so ge lamchi yomare nangpala sansam ge san lamchi yomare lamchi nija paso tu koran so jini mo wo lajo de zakan jore lamchi yomare ani ku yo de nyam de tis ha ko du langa ene inda jin male ri gonda ta mukashi paji mutu sto som bijinga jina ta nebale ge sansam ge jokwa yo sa ro ji la ji komba yo sa ji la ro top ta ngazo kashi ji yang wala lar beti tsina gonda manro mato chi kanan tis lar gonda son shogi chi 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 de males kuzun ramna yeni les ta tela ta kala sa ya ro ta de nyoyan du tis tenda ro si tini ngaso tela phachi nyamani son ka sta tin dis ting mi du ti nyama khashi tir tini gale gale mo chi gle ni le ta da lozan chi din la san chu nu yebde ni sto ko chi an da lam chi de su changmal le ta le du zam to mo hipchu sheji heni ji re da nga sengu chemen du ti ta ngaso 다 바지 고네 요마리 템부 상마 돈치 상노니 테 심바 상마 셈나 세나 다 가리는 상마 차리 다 구에 니만 인사스 구서 대가나 뭐 nga tuji me tae yong kan jona tinin kan ma pa du kan ke ta de so ke me ji tae me jo chau do o tin ra jin me na gong char nga so tin ra ji ti tin ya ma ku su sang za tin ya re wa ra ji lam ji da ko ran su re wa ji tu sin so
And of course, when I crossed the Shergombo, I lost the tour guide because they were at the other side. They were searching the people, and fortunately, I'm accompanied with a Sarah monk who had already experienced crossing this route, and then we followed along with him, and what I recall is 3 to 4 people who just reached the border of Nepal at some nomadic place, but he along with some other group, they cannot go there. They were just they stationed at the snow for overnight, and next day they crossed the border and they reached the Nepal at around early in the morning, and she stayed there for 2 to 3 days. 2 to 3 days. And then suddenly there were other people who were coming. The one who stayed with Sergio Metti in the tent, his name is Tenzin Shenken. He also came, and what he recalled is there were close to around 40 to 41 people who escaped through this journey. And then we went to the embassy, and we cannot immediately have a sight, good vision, because we have to cross the white snow for a long time. So they have this night blindness, kind of, sight blindness, and for the 4 to 5 days we have to adjust our eyesight, and that's how he came across the Nangpa La and the treacherous journey from Tibet to India, Tibet to Nepal.
Hero. 다 자갈래 타나 그 나와 찐이 소다 장고를 부지다 참은 지하라 송 데디다 있다 데리더니 진즈라초데도 홉트칼라 삼노든든 지른 땅 아주 저기는 수잘 땅서 수잘은 지라노 장고를 부지 빠르침부 여유 버거든 땅은 홉트칼라 소소 어떻게 지나 샤는 느끼면서 소소 감달려요 부지 장고를 부지 빠르다다 티콜게 지는 또 남주미 이제 감달로 지디 어떻게 저어되게 나와 찐이 빠르서 딜레나 다 총강을 코스리 총강을 증강을 다 관조나 장구로 부지 빠 통주 여유 바로 지라 안디다 초로
sometimes 소소 매기 요 나와놓지. 티투 시간은 되게는 상상은 엔더지 보면 괜찮은 limit.
So once he reached India for around couple of months, he had this cultural, the shock. When he go to school, suddenly he found a big portrait of His Holiness Dalai Lama, and he has a, that memory of being inside Tibet. So suddenly he feel like, okay, it is allowed or not. And also when he go to the shop, he sees a big portrait of His Holiness Dalai Lama. Everywhere he sees the portrait of His Holiness Dalai Lama. So that's kind of acclimatizing yourself to the new culture. So it took him around 2 to 3 months to get along with that. He is now in other cultural space. We will complete the session here, and quickly we will take maybe a couple of questions. Because of the time constraint, we'll just make it really short. Please ask question as short and precise.
The two guys that had to try again, did they have to go back to the same pass to get in? Did they go a different?
The question is about whether these two guys who did it a second time, did they try Nangpa La or a different route? Jamyang has a great story about a Chinese guy, a Chinese soldier in the middle of the night in the full moon, blinded by the moon.
Thank you so much for your question. Yes, after captured by Chinese soldier, so we have been putting in. First, we have been keep it in 1 week something in Tingri, in Tibetan place Tingri, and after that they transfer us to Shikatse. So in Shikatse, I think almost more than 2 months. More than 2 months, something they have been keep us in there. So during that time, it's not just stay in the prison. That's easy. So they let us every time go out and walk. And one more special thing is in Tiring. So I forget to say that. And that time I'm the one little bit special because I went in Chinese school for a short of time. So they know that I can speak Chinese language. So one day, one very special day, that it's a midnight. So they suddenly called me. Someone called me and said that, can you speak Chinese? It's a Chinese guy. Yes, I can say a little bit. Then he said that you gonna help me one time. I say, what is that? Then he said that, will you be afraid for seeing the dead body? He told me like this. I think I'm 13 or 12 years only. So I was scared, of course. I never saw this in my past life. So I say I'm gonna be a little bit scared. But he said that if you did it well, I'm gonna give some gift for you because I'm a kid. So he may think that he may give some biscuit to me like that. So he took me. I think from the Tingri prison to 1 hour or somewhere. So they in the new construction built. It's not a complete built. It's a new construction built, and they keep our road partner that Kesam Namsu's dead body inside the room. And I swear that I can't realize that who is this also. It already totally becomes swelling and white. So I saw, and they say that, did you know this one? Did you know her name? Because they don't have idea. They only murdered her. That's it. They don't know where she is and how old or from where she came. So I said that, yes, same as you, and even we just meet in the road. And I even don't know her from before, so I don't have any idea. So after they say that if you don't have idea, it's okay, you can go back. But I can see that they are giving warning to backside the people who took me to recognize that dead person. They said, if this young guy speak out this thing to someone, then what you gonna do? And that Chinese guy warning me a lot. He said that if you speak out, I'm gonna cut your tongue. I'm gonna break your leg. He warning me lots of time. So after that, from Shikatse prison, we have been keeping 2 months something that. Then one of my uncle who was staying in Lhasa, he came back to Lhasa and to prison, and he tried to take me out. And he have paid some fine, I think. He have paid so much money, and he have some connection, and he tried to take me out. So I finally came out. So that time I was totally injured. And due to staying many days in the prison, my back up itching, and so it was so not uncomfortable. So anyway, after staying 1 month, I try again from another way, from Dam, from the Nepali and the Tibetan border. So I come in one night, So I successfully reached in second time. So I went to civil school Suja, and I met my friend again in there. He was a surprise.
님바 nga te jiga chen ma tong de ta ta za da tong ba ko su ta ngo su pa ma da ta pje da to mo bol ka ka pa lam ba do su ko su ta ko nga te jin ro ma ri si yong ja ko su ta khak jan ro ji ja ko su ko ma ti se ja ma tong jo re ma tong de zong ho no ne ti jin ni ka zong se ne te ta da tong shen de la je pa ya jo re ka se ne sam ka to go ndo ji ji re san sa ba ndo ji san sa su ga ji ta pa se yo ma re 통신 트렌치 라가다 자미키 samkwan sansan padan rochi yor te pasit rocho gorte
Train past the kin.
te pasit te on samkwan sub garji tnu yo mare ga chomar kono ta jame kala ko pug sansan pug ne bale sansan yora ti sansan padan rochi yor te zu teni le de ta ko so ma chala nga yimba chi ro kwa chin da ko so ne bale motor ma chin tanke tin ane peshe tri tanke ane semo te ram tu khingna ji de ma yo te chuzani cho chenbo ji yo cho pa chenbo pa gwa gra te ba ga te ka thur chenbo ji thur lam na ka se juba chenbo ta ti ka ne ko te bal ke pa ja pa thin te tri chi pa te cho pa ga ani ran su ka so ton chule ro don ro ji ba
Yeah, so as he said, he was in the prison of Shikatse. So getting out of the Shikatse was not that easy. He have to give the affirmation or confirmation that he'll not do this, and he also have to give the phone number of his local guidance, like parent and cousin and everyone who is known to him. With that, he got the bail to get out of the Shikatse prison. And about the second route that he escaped from Tibet. So once you are inside Tibet, you have this Tongse
Tongshen
train
Tongshen la gra sansan tu pun ro ji ta
Tongshen train pass. This pass will valid you to go to the border area. Okay, so he took that pass and then he went to the border area, and from there, he already spoke with a few of the Nepalese, tour guide too, tour guide, and then illegally he trespassed that area, and of course crossing the border itself is not that easy. You have to cross the huge river at the border, and also he have the rope. He been tied with the rope, and then through the other person who just pulled it from the other side. Not like a simple bridge, but it's just a rudimentary kind of any. So
A rope sling, what
a
we
rope
call a
sling,
flying
yeah.
fox in Australia.
Right.
A very
So
dangerous flying
very
fox.
dangerous, and then finally he reached to the safer place.
ta te chot so ga de to ga choma jara ta ham ro ste ha ya bo ji ko ya me da ham trouble tur ko ya mar da chot ham so ma no bari so ani ro din do jin jo ham de ma so ma ko ra ani pa ga da chot pa ga sa de sing na da pa ga de ya ga de to dong chu che la ni ko pa jin ro da ani ham so ma ra da kon je ma le chen na ngo de ne le
한국 답답해요, 그런 게.
한 요즘은 줄다지 요는 줄다든 troubleshit이래요 뭐다 이 롱파 차라 롱파 제도
So
야이 갈래 갈다 좀 가야다
so when he was pulled through the river, his shoes got wet, and once he was at the other side, he have to walk for around a couple of hours. So it's no way that this shoe will bear him for a longer time. So in between, that shoe is completely worn out, and he crosses with the barefoot.
들지 저 진타마 저 중계 때로 고모 동래 자미 고모 동래 썸 같이 들어봤지 네발 산산 저 네발 추스 때네 네 그랬어 들지
So the
네네 고모 숙대요라 부정 네네 고 어떤 날
So he gave around 3,000 yuan to the the Nepalese the trespasser, and then he reached the transit camp in Nepal, and through transit camp he's further got to the Dharamsala. Okay, one last question, if anyone is interested.
I have something I'd like to say, if I may. I'd like to thank the lads and everyone who's involved in the production of Murder in the Snow. But I've had two experiences inside Tibet. When I was researching this film, I was in Nepal and I thought, I'd better go in and have a look and see if I can get to meet Annie Kelsang Namso's parents. And of course, this was impossible, actually. But I did go into Lhasa and had hired a local young lady who was a guide whose father had been a temple carpenter at the Potala Palace. And Youngla said to me, this is a city of 150,000 people. 100,000 of them are Chinese military, including 10,000 lowland Chinese sex workers. The bad girls of China who are committed of minor crimes are given the choice of jail or go to Tibet and become prostitutes for the Chinese military. And the rest of the city was about 50,000 Tibetans. Now, it was very much the holy city of Lhasa. And in those days, there was a modest amount of development. Now, 3 years ago, on the 60th anniversary of the Dalai Lama's exile, I put together a group of 8 Australians, one of whom was Sikkimese, who spoke 5 languages. A wonderful woman, a friend of mine. And we walked across Nepal, and we walked into Tibet, and around Mount Kailash, and then we went to Lhasa. So this was a sort of reverse pilgrimage to honour the exile. So we did it exactly 60 years after the exile. And we went into Lhasa to have a look. Lhasa is now a city of 1 million people. So in 12 years, it's gone from 150,000 to over 1 million. As you drive across Tibet, there are many quite good roads. Every second vehicle is a concrete truck or a steel truck. You get the sense that there is a juggernaut, an unstoppable juggernaut. That's just, I came away thinking, they've lost. There is no hope. You cannot go to a urinal without there being a surveillance camera. And it was a cautionary tale to the Australians. That facial recognition technology was developed in Sydney at the University of Technology with Chinese money and a Chinese unit and Australian knowledge. That project has since been abandoned. But that sort of facial recognition technology is everywhere. In the bus we're in Tibet, there are cameras. You stop every so often at a bridge that goes over the road. There's an instant upload. You are told not to have conversations in your hotel room because the surveillance is everywhere. If you go out on the streets of Lhasa, you watch it. Just be careful of what you're doing, because you are under surveillance all the time. And I mean it literally. You cannot go to a urinal without there being a camera. There are hundreds of thousands of cameras. And Lhasa has been turned from a modest, ancient, holy city into Lhasa Vegas. If you get a chance to go online, you can have a look at a little film called A Pilgrimage into Tibet, which was published 2 years ago. And it just gives you a glimpse of modern Tibet and the impressions of 8 people who, we're only in Tibet for a month. So you can't dig very deep, but you don't really have to dig very deep because there are cops and soldiers everywhere. There is surveillance everywhere. There is supervision everywhere. So when you do go to Tibet, and I hope some of you do, because it's important that the stories of what is happening in that cultural genocide are told and retold and retold and retold. That is incredibly important. Go in and bear witness. Go with a Tibetan company, not a Chinese company. Go from Kathmandu. Don't go Sydney, Hong Kong, Chengdu. Don't take the sky rail, because you'll get a much better view if you go with a Kathmandu-based Tibetan company. I can recommend one. They're called Tibet Holidays, and they're incredibly ethical and good people. So if you're so inclined, do a trek. Do it, if you've got the legs for it and the oxygen capacity for it, do it. Go in, have a look. It's an occupied country. Thank you. Something else for the Australians is Australia has been taking 100 Tibetans a year and their families for a long time as immigrant refugees. They all come from families who've been touched by jail or they're considered political prisoners. And that program may be under threat at the moment because we are under pressure to accept many more refugees from Ukraine and Myanmar and other countries. So one of the things we're going to do, Zoe Bedford and I will do, is make a little lobbying video because we want to keep that open because, in India, Tibetans are stateless. They are not citizens of India. India is not signatories to any refugee agreement, like most Western countries. Tibetans are tolerated, but they're stateless, so they have no rights here. So Tibetans can never really be Indian citizens, but they can make very good Australians. Thank you.
Finally, I would like to thank Mark for the insightful talk and speak about the incident and tell the story behind making the movie. And I also want to thank Gasola, Sudimla and Jans Mitala for sharing their heartfelt first-hand experience, even if it's hard to relive the ordeal and share your story. So as a token of gratitude, now I'd like to ask our director to hand over a small gift to the speakers and conclude the session.
Can we have a big round of applause, please? I think.
No, Jamie.
A small token from us. Thank you so much. And Sujim Lodela, he is currently chef at Menzikan, Tibetan, I think Menzikan, right? So he's currently working there as a chief chef.
And he has a fabulous wife and two young sons.
And last but not the least, Makla, thank you so much. We just met a week ago, and then we thought we should tell the story to the audience again. As he said, we have to retool again everything because this is one incident of many, right? And if I'm correct, 16 years back, China is not economically rich. They are just starting it, and their hands are, in these kind of activities, because of which right now we see the China, So we have to really see the Chinese from deep inside. So people like him and the stories and the experience, I think this really makes, our museums teams, people's museum. So I think we will host these kind of activities again and again. So in case in future, we will post you updated for our future activities. And please do come and do let us know if there's anything that you want to tell. Thank you so much for coming. And after this, we have a refreshment. Please we have small cookies and tea. So at that time, you can also speak with them casually. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.